Good morning. Good Tuesday morning. Andrew Egger, good to see you. How are you?
Hey, Mona, I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself?
Pretty well. Yep. I had a friend who used to say, every day that a safe doesn't fall on your head is a good day.
That's a good mantra to live by. I'm gonna pick that one up.
Yeah. So you had a really interesting reflection in this morning's Morning Shots about Brian Kemp, a rare figure in today's GOP. So why don't you tell us about that? It was interesting.
Yeah. Brian Kemp is the governor of Georgia. He's very popular down there. He would be a rare breed in any era because he is a very conservative governor who is very popular in what's essentially now a purple state. He's not like a moderate Republican by any stretch, but he is nevertheless broadly popular, one of the more popular governors in America, despite the fact that Georgia's basically 50-50 Republican and Democrat at this point. At least that's the way it goes in presidential elections. He is additionally very interesting as a figure in the Trump era because he has been able to carve out a lane that is sort of unique for a lot of reasons that I'll talk about. I should pivot back around to the actual news and why we're talking about him at all, which is that he is up. His second term is up. He was reelected in 2022, so he's out. He's term limited out in 2026. Georgia has a Senate seat opening up a Senate race in 2026. John Ossoff, the Democrat, is running for re-election. Republicans are trying to find a challenger. A lot of Republicans were really, really hoping that Brian Kemp would step into that race. He's really the only Republican in the whole state who polling suggests would be favored to beat Ossoff. There's not a deep bench of other figures. When you think of kind of other Georgia figures beyond Brian Kemp in the Republican Party, they are either people who are heavily MAGA, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, or they're people who have gotten a lot of blowback within their own party for opposing different things that Donald Trump has done. Guys like Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. And
didn't the lieutenant governor also say something really sensible? I'd have to look this up, but I remember the lieutenant governor of Georgia saying something along the lines of, the election was free and fair, or some other sin.
I need to brush up on this. You're talking about in real time that was happening, right?
Yeah, in real time. Yeah. I think I remember that. Then,
but they have a new lieutenant governor now who's like a lot more Trumpy, is at least my understanding. Who was elected also alongside. They don't have running mates in Georgia. The governor and lieutenant governor are not elected on the same ticket, so they have independent primaries. So this is kind of what happened. That's interesting about Brian Kemp is that in 2022, when Georgia was swinging, the Republicans in Georgia at least were swinging to be very Trumpy in a lot of different ways. Trump had primary challenges all up and down that Republican ballot. And in particular, Trump really wanted to go after Brian Kemp. And the reason for that is that Kemp had not aggressively, debunked or refuted his election lies, a la Brad Raffensperger, who we were just talking about a minute ago. Raffensperger had really stepped up into the breach and been like, no, you didn't win Georgia. There wasn't widespread fraud here, and he got a MAGA target on his back because of that. Kemp had been a lot more reserved, a lot more quiet, had not jumped forward in that way, but also had refused to kind of help, had refused to aid and abet Trump's attempt to steal the 2020 election in Georgia. He'd said he had no power to do any of the things that Trump was asking him to do, essentially, which was true. Trump never forgave him for that, or at least didn't forgive him for that for a very long time. And in 2022, when Kemp himself was up for re-election, Trump tried very hard to oust him. He recruited a primary challenger, David Perdue, former senator from Georgia, who had lost in 2020, in part because of Donald Trump, but recruited Perdue to kind of be the MAGA torchbearer, the vessel of election integrity-related wrath against Brian Kemp. And it fizzled out. It was a total non-starter. Kemp walked this really interesting line again in 2022 where he didn't respond, he didn't react, he didn't say anything really one way or another about Donald Trump. He went after Perdue, he hit him pretty hard on a bunch of stuff, but he basically just ran on his conservative record and he said, I think my record speaks for itself, people like me, I'm popular, whatever. And he crushed Perdue in that primary. He beat him by 50 points. It was a 75-25 primary. for this race that Trump had tried to turn into like this massive referendum on
Referendum.
Kemp. And at that
Yeah.
moment, it was like, oh my gosh, is Brian Kemp a canary in a coal mine for like a new sort of Republican politics where Trump is out of office? He is plainly trying to do the exact same sort of Godfather mafioso sort of punishing dissidents and keeping lesser Republicans in line that he's been doing for years. And yet here in this very high profile case, he has completely failed to do that. He's fallen flat. So interesting. What does that mean for the future? And I think that a lot of people saw Kemp at that time in 2022 as, wow, here is the kind of guy who, if the Trump era actually is over, is emerging as a really credible potential like leader in whatever a post-Trump GOP might look like. There were always some problems with that. He's not exactly like the most cosmopolitan figure in the world. It's not necessarily clear. He's got kind of like a good old boy thing going. His support around the state has always been very much predicated on relationships and just really good retail politics and all those sorts of things. So like there were always some questions about how well it would translate to a national brand, but still highly popular, highly conservative, and had this like silver bullet thing of having stood up to Trump and won. But we all know what happened the 2 years after that, or the 3 years now. Ever since Trump comes roaring back onto the national stage, the idea of whether there will ever be a post-Trump GOP, certainly whether one is imminent, gets shoved further and further back, and that puts a guy like Kemp in a weird spot where it would make sense for him as a term-limited governor who wants to continue on in politics, who wants to build a brand on the national stage. Historically, it's a very obvious jumping point to go to the Senate, right? And again, he would clean up in a primary, and he would be favored uniquely among Republicans in the state to win in the general. Although, who knows what the national climate will look like after 2 years of Donald Trump.
We don't know. Mm-hmm.
But he's in a total bind here because, he and Trump kind of made nice last year. Trump said some nice things about him on the campaign trail while Trump was trying to win in Georgia. Kemp kept his smile on and said, I want Donald Trump to win. He didn't go much beyond that. He didn't say a lot of things about his character or anything like that, but they kind of made nice. But if you go to the U.S. Senate, the strategy that Kemp has pursued so far of basically just treating Donald Trump like an interesting person out there who doesn't really affect his life at all, totally over, right? I mean, the only purpose of the Republican Senate right now is to rubber stamp things Donald Trump does, or to be a person who stands up and opposes things like Mitt Romney. You can't really, or Susan Collins or Lisa Murkowski. You cannot really be in this Trump agnostic space in the U.S. Senate. And so people still speculate. I talked to a lot of my former sources in Georgia. I guess they're still my sources in Georgia because they're still talking to me yesterday about this news. And they're all the Republicans down there are pretty unanimous. They're like, we think he's still a strong contender for 2028. And we'll see about that. I mean, like, I guess he's one of these guys who's thinking about throwing his hat in the ring. But I think he's just a really striking example of a person who he's maybe the most personally successful example of a broad GOP archetype of, if we just wait and see, this whole thing's going to blow over and we can kind of get back to doing things the way we've always done them. And so far, that really has not panned out for anybody, except Brian Kemp in this one governor's race. So who knows whether it's possible for him to rebottle that magic and redeploy it in 2028. But again, I think the bottom line here is just yet another person who is yet another Republican who is finding it not in their immediate term interest to kick up too many waves when it comes to Donald Trump, and that's why he's bowing out of the Senate here.
I remember thinking at a certain point that there was something in the water in Georgia, because not only did Kemp crush Purdue in that primary, but also Brad Raffensperger got reelected. And Brad Raffensperger, maybe he wasn't quite at the Bulwark level of anti-Trumpism, but he committed major sins in MAGA world by just thoroughly debunking the idea that there was fraud in the 2020 race, and wrote a book about it and was sued by them and on and on. And he got reelected. So I thought, wow, there's something maybe there. But But Trump did win the state in 2024, and it's hard to say, but that every now and then you got these will-o'-the-wisp ideas that maybe there is a post-Trump Republican Party. Not right now. So let's look for a minute at something else. I don't know if you saw this story, and you may not have, but because it's new. But right before we came on, I found this story from Financial Times about Melania Trump and her meme coin. Okay, so we all knew that Trump launched a meme coin, and let's talk about. I mean, just for a second, pause on what the level of corruption that we're talking about here is, because a crypto coin is basically an open door for anybody on earth to put money in your pocket, like dictators, terrorists, it doesn't matter. Anybody in the world can put money in your pocket by purchasing these crypto coins. So Trump launches one, really just head-spinningly corrupt. But also Melania did. And her coin, this is from the Financial Times. This is about how these guys roll. Melania Trump unveiled the $ Melania, all caps, coin in a social media post late on January 19th, just hours before her husband was inaugurated as the U.S. president. In the 2.5 minutes before her post went live on Truth Social, 24 digital wallets bought $2.6 million worth of the tokens from the crypto marketplace where they had been deposited. The traders profited when Melania's post sent the price of the tokens soaring. The wallets offloaded most of their coins rapidly, with 81% of their sales taking place within 12 hours. I wonder who that would be, Eric Trump, Donald Trump Jr., Tiffany, and who else? A few people, maybe Howard Lutnick. It's just, you have any comments?
It's so just open and shut. It's so naked. I mean, it really is these stories are always so staggering because they're at the nexus of, this totally unregulated, or not totally unregulated, largely unregulated and wholly lawless and scam ridden crypto world with, among their most wholly lawless and scam happy participants, which is the Trump family. I had not actually seen this story. I don't know if you know, but as an AM newsletter writer, Mona, basically the way this works, let's just put a little peek behind the curtain. I finish all that up. I get the newsletter out, and then between when the newsletter goes out and when we tape, just between us here, that's when I brush my teeth and get dressed, take a shower, all those sorts of things. But no, I mean I have a few thoughts about this. One is just so transparent, the corruption, but also kind of what do you expect? Because they've all been corrupt. They haven't necessarily all been quite this naked about it. Quite such an obvious what crypto nuts would describe as a rug pull, which is like basically the chief villain move you can do in these tokens.
Wait, rug pull? Can you
rug pulling?
About that a little bit more? What's that?
Yeah, let me talk about this. The basics of a rug pull in crypto have to do with the fact that the only thing that creates value for a coin is basically attention and notoriety, right? So the idea is you are a notorious person for some reason. You're a public figure. You have clout online in this space. You buy a bunch of a coin. You talk it up. You're like, hey, it's the hot new thing. It's me. I'm the guy you all pay attention to. Get my coin. Or get this coin that I like. A bunch of people buy it up. It drives up the price. You sell. You just pocket a bunch of money. You do a wealth transfer from the people who pay attention to you and other get rich quickers. It's just a straightforward. You take money from them and walk away with it, and it's basically legal. And it is among kind of the crypto gang. People who pay attention to these things, it's basically like the main villain move that you can do, because it is obviously unethical. It's obviously just taking people's money, and it also is kind of like an affront to the whole concept of the thing, because it does sort of just expose how at bottom, when you strip away kind of all of the layers of sort of technobabble around this stuff, it is just a speculative market for people to try to make a quick buck. So for example, the Haktua girl, I don't know if you remember her. She had her 15 minutes of fame for going viral in that clip, and then she launched a cryptocurrency and did a rug pull and walked away with a bunch of money. That was kind of like the end of her 15 minutes of fame. And this is it sounds like, from what you're narrating here in the Financial Times, it sounds like this is exactly what undisclosed parties have done. Who knows if it's Melania herself or just other people related to it, but you buy low because the post is coming, then the post comes and it jacks up the price and you walk away with the money. That's all.
Honestly, people who are getting scammed here, don't they kind of, now I sound like JVL, but don't they sort of deserve it? Because they're in it for a get rich quick thing too.
Yeah, it depends who you mean, because there are a lot of people in this space who are themselves doing nothing other than basically rent seeking, right? I mean, they are also just trying to buy this fake imaginary speculative asset in the hope that it will magically multiply the number of real US dollars in their name, right? And so those people are obviously just hard to pity. Although I don't know, there's a certain kind of pity, I guess, that you can give a particularly gullible mark, even when their motives are purely base and monetary, right? I mean, it's like, oh, poor sucker, that you would think that your ticket to fabulous new wealth was the Melania coin. But the thing I was going to say a minute ago is just that while this is the most nakedly corrupt of these, the scams have been obviously corrupt for months, and this is like the 15th of them, right? I mean, like these crypto enterprises that they keep standing up that are just so nakedly trading on the president's name, on access to the president. He's been separately advertising this dinner that he's going to have with the top however many holders of his meme coin. And that's just a thing that he's been talking about for weeks now. It's all just so base, and I think they just realize that there's no consequence. People don't care. Or the people who care, or at least the people who do care, are already people who don't like Donald Trump for other reasons and would continue to not like Donald Trump for all the other stuff that he's doing. And so it's like, well, why not just make a corrupt free buck?
Yeah. Can I just say though, there's an aspect of this. So it's bad enough to float a meme coin and just sort of profit from people wanting to be in on the new thing. We have, because I'm popular and blah, blah. That's bad enough. But this had the extra layer of the insider trading aspect, which was, before she announces the coin, a bunch of people buy it who've been tipped off. That's the part that's just really, really corrupt and ugly, even more so.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And that's what qualifies it as again, like even within the Wild West of crypto world, the unforgivable sin of doing a rug pull, right?
Okay. Okay.
The one other thing, can I just ask about this? Maybe you understand this better than I do, because I have just never really been able to wrap my head around the particular micro cult of Melania. Like I get what's going on with Donald Trump, right? But it's just not clear to me why anyone in Trump world is all that excited to have her be the moon to Trump's son. I mean, she's just his third trophy wife, right? I mean, why are her schemes? I guess I don't really understand why Trump people aren't more just sort of faintly embarrassed by her trying to cash in this way and having this sort of presence. I don't know. Like, she sold that coffee table book.
You're asking why they're not embarrassed? I mean, these are people.
Yeah, but a lot of them don't really like women, I mean,
Sorry?
A lot of them aren't particularly into women. Like, they don't like women. They're just.
I bet a lot of her fans are Trump supporting women, I would guess. But I don't know that. It's. I think it's just all part of the generalized cult. And I could not believe in the first term the worship of these plastic Trump children who were such wicked people, obviously. And, remember Donald, I will never forget that Donald Trump Jr., after the hammer attack on Paul Pelosi, the first thing he does is jump online and say, oh, it must have been some, like sexual tryst gone wrong. And they were making fun of him and they were laughing. And it was just such a perfect encapsulation of how evil these people are, that they don't have even the basics of when somebody you disagree with who's in the other party gets physically attacked and nearly killed. Even in a moment like that, you can't have the decency to say, we're all praying for his survival and this is terrible and blah, blah, blah. His speedy recovery. No, I mean, they are about as bad as people can be. And
Wasn't Trump Jr. the one who subsequently posted like a joke where he had like a Paul Pelosi Halloween costume with
yep.
like underwear and a hammer? I mean, just like the most noxious, unbelievable. You're totally right.
But even people like that, even the horrible Trump children who are like the wicked stepsisters in the Cinderella story, are just, lionized and praised. And, people would say in some of Sarah's focus groups, what do you like about Trump? Oh, well, he's been a really good father. His children
Right.
turned out so well. Wow.
Oh, man.
First of all, they didn't do anything to raise these kids other than contribute semen. And second, they're horrible. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, and I totally get like I guess it's easier for me to kind of intellectually process like how Don Jr. gets some reflected raise, because it is so much of like a chip off the old block sort of situation where he's just cruel and gross and mean and rich, and loud about MAGA causes. I guess just like it's like the figure of Melania that is always particularly confused me, just because like she just so much seems to march to the beat of her own drum with all this stuff. I mean, she's not any of Trump's adult children's mother, and she's kind of a late addition to this whole roster in a lot of ways, and she was always, all of her things were always so oblique and so different. It was like the Christmas decorations at the White House and the Be Best anti-bullying program mixed with like bizarre aesthetic flourishes like that I Really Don't Care Do You outfit that she wore to see victims of some natural disaster. And I forget what the specifics of that were, but I mean, just such a she's completely unintelligible to me as a public figure, and I'm excited to go read this story about her meme coin when we're done here.
Yeah, I think she's I never understood all the internet excitement about, oh, Melania's going to leave Donald now. And, after he lost re-election, all of that. I mean, all of this interest in their relationship, I have none of it. I don't care. I think she's a horrible person for marrying him. She did once say what was probably the most revealing thing when somebody asked her if Trump's money had anything to do with his appeal. She said, well, don't you think my looks had something to do with my appeal?
Right.
It was about as, straightforward as it gets. It was a transaction. And so, that's the kind of person she is. But yeah, the answer to your question is I cannot shed any light on Melania. By the way, our producer, Jim Swift, I wasn't able to click on it correctly before, but he did supply. It's Jeff Duncan, was the former lieutenant governor of Georgia, who was also very good. I don't know if he's still involved in Georgia politics or has any sort of a political future, but he was okay. We had Pope Donald the First. So Trump is everything he was in the first term, but more so. And he has, I think, is beginning to reveal, even to the casual viewer, just how megalomaniacal he is. And that's probably not good for his popularity. So what did you make of that? So somebody does an AI generated image of Trump as the Pope at a moment when how many billion, 1.2 billion Catholics in the world are still mourning Francis and looking forward to the solemn conclave, and there's Trump posting this. What?
Yeah, I mean, it's all a joke, right? It's all a bit. There's no it's Trump at bottom is like a comedic figure, right? I mean, it's like it's kind of hard to imagine him being somber or solemn about anything. He can be angry and upset and mad, but like the idea of him like
And
being kind
petulant.
of yeah, or the idea of him being grave about anything is just really
True.
that's why I mean some of the most kind of surreal moments in his first term were moments where he was sort of expected to perform that role. I mean, do you remember that very famous clip of him being told that Ruth Bader Ginsburg has just died? He's like outside Air Force One. A tiny dancer is randomly playing in the background, and he's like, I'm hearing about that for the first time. You know, what can you say? She was an amazing woman, lived an amazing life. Like that it's just surreal because it's not the mode that he's ever in. And I think people don't really expect him to be in that mode. People don't really expect him to show up and pay the respects in kind of a respectful way. He's a clown, and even his supporters kind of pick up that in some respects he's a clown. But even clowns can pick targets that you're like, hey, wait a minute, don't joke about that. That's not funny. And I think that was the reaction from a lot of Catholics. I'm not Catholic. You're not Catholic. Part of it is difficult. The one thing that's difficult for me to kind of get in the headspace there is that the way that Catholics think about, or some Catholics at least think about, like iconography and just kind of like the visual element is sort of alien and foreign to me. I remember 6 months ago or a year ago, probably now, I had a Morning Shots newsletter where the header image was Ronna McDaniel, the former chair of the Republican Party, and we had kind of done her up in kind of like Catholic-esque imagery as a saint, just kind of like I don't know, it was like some little joke, some little quip, and I had Catholic friends who were unhappy with me about that, which I was not expecting. I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to like upset you people by making light of the way you all do business over there. So I know that some Catholics have had exactly the same reaction. On the other hand, it's one of these things that's like so implausible. He's not Catholic. He's not in the running. I mean, JD Vance
He's
is,
not a
is, a, is a
cardinal.
much better
Last I
candidate for Pope
checked.
than Donald Trump
And
is.
it's not like being Speaker of the House, where you don't even have to be a member of the House of Representatives to be elected, right? I think to be elected Pope, you kind of have to be in the College of Cardinals, right? Oh, then again, you're not a Catholic and I'm not either, so I don't know.
You'll need to get Joe Perticone on here to talk through all that stuff. But I guess the thing that on the one hand my instinct is to just say like, okay, this is just sort of a joke. He is just plainly clowning. But on the other hand, like the one thing about it that does sort of stick in your craw is that it is totally in keeping with a real and constantly active and very dangerous part of Donald Trump's personality, which is that he just doesn't think there are other people in the world who should be really making decisions about anything, right? I mean,
who should be respected.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean,
he doesn't think that someone else should get to be the Pope. He doesn't think. I mean, it's only a little bit crazier and jokier or whatever than when he was posting that "Long Live the King" stuff, a couple of months ago. Photoshop pictures of himself with a crown on his head, posted from the same exact official White House account. I mean, it's like, here's the guy who gets to make the decisions, is the stated actual political platform of the entire Republican Party on everything today. So it's like, when you're in that environment, it's a little harder to see the funny side, such as it is, whatever funny side might be in these sort of jokes about the papacy.
So, as Alice Roosevelt Longworth said about her father, Teddy Roosevelt, he wants to be the bride at every wedding and the corpse at every funeral. And that's Trump. There's a new pope, so of course he's going to dress up. But the fact is, and this is why I raised it, is that this is the kind of thing that really does cross a line with people, and there are moments that just require solemnity that, as you say, he can't do. Far less to post himself. I mean, it is just so offensive. It's the kind of thing that I do believe breaks through. People pass it around. And it's just, there has never been, I don't know, in like the last 100 years or so, maybe a little less than that, like the winner, maybe it's the last 50. I saw this statistic and I looked it up and it's true. Like the winner of every presidential contest is the winner of the Catholic vote in the United States. And you don't want to offend the Catholic vote. Bad idea.
Yeah. I think there's one other kind of like analytical wrinkle that's important to tease out here, which is that Trump did himself make a joke, about like just kind of off the cuff, where someone asked, hey, who do you think ought to be the next pope? And he was like, oh, I'd like to be the pope. Like he said that like as a joke out loud. But the picture that you're talking about, where he's all done up in the regalia, that was posted to not his personal, at Real Donald Trump account. That was like from the official White House account. So it's pretty clear that is, some junior comms staffer who is mocking this up, who thinks this is funny. And I think that it's a slightly different flavor even than what we were talking about, where Trump has this inability to really be solemn and somber when the mood requires. So much of the infrastructure of what Republican politics is all about right now, of the people that Trump is increasingly surrounding himself with and building that whole apparatus around himself with, it's this increasingly nihilistic, very online flavor and mode of doing politics that's very unique to kind of like young Republicans today, right? All young people have grown up in America in this totally internet saturated and kind of irony poisoned culture, right? But that has the kind of cruel edge of that has now come so much to the forefront in the Republican politics of like young Republican operatives today. So it's a slightly different thing, where Trump is the kind of guy who every once in a while will recognize that a situation is supposed to call for some solemnity, and he will strain toward it, and he will kind of fail, and that's sort of funny in its own way, and he's sui generis in that way. The sort of thing that you see from these younger operatives is not quite that. It's that an occasion for solemnity is actually an occasion to be deliberately kind of like nihilistically funny, or to do jokes and bits, right? I mean, it's like, and you see this on Twitter, not just on Republican politics, but I mean, it's kind of the main thrust of the way the internet responds to any notable death. The Queen of England dies, and people make a ton of jokes immediately about it, right? And it's like they're supposed to be funnier because not because people hate the Queen of England, but just because it's sort of transgressive to do that. And I think that's part of what you see with all of this too, is that ethos is increasingly the kind of beating heart of the way that young Republican staffers see politics today as well.
That's a story of decline, but but let's switch to something else that I want to hear your views about, which is. There was a memo, an intelligence community memo, that was declassified after a Freedom of Information request about Tren de Aragua. And it's very interesting what the intelligence community discovered or concluded about Tren de Aragua. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. And if listeners would like to hear more about what the intelligence community said and what we think about it, they should join the Bulwark and become Bulwark members so that they have access to everything we do, because we do a lot that's free, a lot, like maybe more than anybody. But we do have a paywall on certain things that are just for our members, and this is one of them. So please go over to the Bulwark and sign up and become a member. It's how much is it? I don't even know. Do you know how much it is a year? It's
$10
a
month or $100 a year.
There we go. $100 a year. It's a bargain.
Put food in our mouths. Feed our children.
Andrew has 3 children.